For the first time ever, Agustín Tapia has 5 versions of his AT10 to choose from. Last year there were 4 models, but the big news this year is the AT10 Lite, the lightest version of them all. But how do all the new AT10s perform? What are the differences between them and which one is right for you? Hello all players, I'm Paula and I welcome you to a new 4Set. A few days ago I told you about my first impressions of Agustín Tapia's new racket, the AT10 12K Alum Xtrem, and compare it to last year's most similar versions. But what makes this AT10 different from the other 4 in the 2026 lineup? Well, before we dive in, remember that with the code 4Set on Padel Market you get 10% off any product with worldwide shipping, and you will also win your next Padel match 100% guaranteed. To develop these 5 new models, Agus tested for several days more than 20 combinations of different carbons and cores into different molds, 1 hybrid and 1 diamond shape. So after eliminating many combinations, Tapia chose the core he liked most and his 2 favorite carbons. But just like in the past, he didn't only like the hybrid mold, he also liked the diamond shape. Because remember, Agustín has already played in the past with a diamond-shaped racket, and I can tell you firsthand that he really liked this season's diamond version. So be careful because he could switch to one of them at any time. There are 3 rackets with the hybrid mold this year. First, the most wanted of them all, the AT10 12K Alum Xtrem, which we've already reviewed in detail. Second, the 18K Alum, even though it uses the same carbon and the same core as last year, feels different. Like the rest of the models, the new mold gives us a better air channel and the option to add weights on the head to raise the balance. And third, the AT10 Lite, the lightest of all, where the differences are even more noticeable. Because it's not just 10 grams lighter between 355 and 365 grams, it also uses a different core, the HR3 White Eva, which is softer than both the HR3 Black and the MLD. In fact, that is the same core that's always been used in the ML10. But to be honest, I don't think Agustín will play with the Lite, but for anyone who suffers from arm pain or prefers very easy to handle rackets, this was the missing option. Because it's not only easy to handle thanks to its light weight, but also because of its balance. The one that I have weighs 354 grams with my setup and has a balance of 24.8 centimeters. For comparison, my 12K weighs 360 grams and balance at 25.2 centimeters, while my 18K weighs 358 and balance at 25.4. All this with my setup, meaning I removed the factory grip and added 2 over grips. So now let's talk about the 2 diamond-shaped model this year, the AT10 Attack versions. Because for me, the best looking racket of all 5 AT10s this year is the Attack 12K Alum Xtrem with an almost all-white design that looks amazing combined with the silver carbon finish. This Attack 12K uses the same materials as the hybrid one Agus plays with, only changing the mold. It is true that it's just one change, but it changes everything. Because the balance increases by 1.5 centimeters. That means going from 25.2 to 26.7 on the Attack. That means it's harder to move, you lose a bit of control, but you gain power. And finally, the AT10 Attack 18K. And it's the same in this case, the only difference between the 18K Hybrid and Diamond version is the mold, since it keeps the same core as the Hybrid, the MLD, and like the HR3 used in the 12K models. That also increases the balance up to 26.2 centimeters, making it an intermediate option between the hybrids and the most offensive of all, the Attack 12K. And you don't need to be a genius to notice that Nox designers pick white for the 12Ks and black for the 18s. So here is the first big questions. Are you team white or team black? Well, let me know in the comments, but I'm full on team white. Well, what about the rest of the technical specs across all the AT10s? Well, starting with the roughness, they all share the same sandy roughness and 3D texture across the entire face. But be careful with the grip size because it does change depending on the mold. 12 centimeters on the hybrids and 13 centimeters on the diamonds, making the latter more aggressive. Except for the Lite, the other 4 rackets weigh between 360 and 375 grams. Here are the Padel market prices with the code 4Set for 10% off, with the Hybrid 12K being the most expensive at €350. But do you actually feel differences in performance? Well, let's see the results from the ball output test. Because we can see how the 12K has less ball output than the 18K, with the curious case of the Lite, which combines the rigid 12K carbon with a soft core and ends up being an in-between option. And as always, notice the differences in hardness. It's especially clear that the Lite is softer, mixing a soft core with a stiffer carbon. So we can draw some conclusions if we take the Lite out of the equation, because Nock's strategy is very well thought in offering 2 molds with 2 different carbons. First, the hybrids are more maneuverable than the diamonds. Second, the 12Ks have a drier feel and less ball output. Third, the 18Ks have a slightly bigger sweet spot and feel more comfortable. And fourth, the 12Ks have more power and control, but they are more technical. Well, once you understand the technical differences, let's talk about how each racket performs on court, starting with defense. The Hybrid 12K has a dry feel and feels firmer than the 18K, especially compared to last year's. You need a more pronounced swing because of the lower ball output, but still the sweet spot is big, and combined with its maneuverability, it gives you almost total control. The Hybrid 18K has a more comfortable, less dry feel than the 12K because of the carbon and the core. Compared to last year's model, the differences are barely noticeable, but if we compare it again with the new 12K, you can feel the ball sink more into the racket. The Attack 12K feels the weakest in defense, with low ball output and a smaller sweet spot, and especially less maneuverability because of the high balance. When I was switching between them for the video, I really noticed the difference in handle between the Attack and Hybrid, which can make defense harder, but that is to be expected with the Attack. With the Attack 18K, I get a similar feeling to the Attack 12K, but with a bit more sweet spot and ball output. You can accelerate the ball more than with the Hybrid 18K, but it's harder to move, kind of an in-between. And finally, in defense, the Lite has more ball output than the normal 12K and is super easy to handle. It almost feels like you are hitting with your hand because the balance is so low that you don't feel any strain. You lose a bit of control due to the bounce, but it's the most comfortable of all. Well, now what about volleys with all the new AT10s? The Hybrid 12K performs best in volleys for me. It feels dry but reactive when you want to hit hard. In my opinion, this new AT10 is the closest thing to the perfect balance between maneuverability and reactivity. That gives you amazing control, though, like I said in defense, it's more technical than the 18K and you will need clean shots to generate speed. The Hybrid 18K lets the ball come off easier with less effort and has a slightly bigger sweet spot. It is less dry than the 12K, so the feel and even the sound are a bit different. You get more with less effort, but the ceiling is lower than with the 12K. The Attack 12K is very offensive but harder to move, which can be a pro or a con depending on your style. It has the same dry feel as the Hybrid, but with a higher sweet spot, making it a bit trickier to handle. I personally prefer the Hybrid because of its maneuverability, since in a volley duel the Attack's high balance can work against you. The Attack 18K is softer than the Attack 12K on volleys. I like it more, but it's still a physical racket with high balance. Like with the Hybrid, you get high speed with less effort, but you lose control. And finally, with the Lite, it's impossible to be late on a volley. Like when Goku takes off his training weights and suddenly moves faster, it's the same here. Being lighter and having such a low balance makes it effortless to swing. The trade-off is it doesn't perform as well at high speeds since it's softer. Well, how do all the AT10s perform in bandejas and víboras? The Hybrid 12K is once again the most complete for me thanks to its mix of maneuverability, control and reactivity. Since it's easier to handle than the Attack, you can put more spin on the ball, and because it's drier and has less ball output than the 18K, you get more control. Is it the most powerful and aggressive racket for Víboras? Well, no. Honestly, I think all the AT10s could still improve their roughness. The Hybrid 18K is an easier option if you want to be more aggressive because the ball bounces more off the face. You will gain ball output but lose control, so it can be a double-edged sword. Though honestly, it's the one most players will probably enjoy because of how comfortable it feels. The Attack 12K finally shines in its favorite area, overhead shots. Its high balance really works magic here, giving you more performance than the Hybrid if you want to play super aggressively thanks to that extra leverage effect. The only downside is being able to handle a full match with how physically demanding it is. The Attack 18K feels almost as demanding physically but with more ball output and a bit more sweet spot. It's the more forgiving version of the Attack with almost the same offensive power. And finally, the Lite is so easy to handle that you will struggle to accelerate the ball. If you are looking for a light racket that lets you play comfortably without physical strain and with a super soft feel, it's top tier. And now for the final test. Which of the new AT10s is the most powerful? Well, I did 5 smashes with each racket to measure the average distance, and the results might surprise you. Because if you think the Attack 12K was the one I could bring the ball back with the most, you're wrong. It is true that it's an absolute beast in attack, but like I said, you need the physical strength to get the most out of it. So in the end, I got better results with the Hybrid 12K Tapia's own racket because I could swing faster, and faster acceleration means more energy transfer to the ball. The differences between all of them were slight though, but as I said, I prefer the Hybrid 12K for that faster acceleration. So, Pablo, which AT10 do you recommend for each type of player? Well, the Hybrid 12K Tapia's racket is the most complete of all, the perfect balance of drive feel, reactivity and maneuverability, a solid 9 in every aspect. The Hybrid 18K is a more comfortable version than the 12K with a bigger sweet spot and more ball output but with a lower performance ceiling. The Attack 12K is the most offensive of all, with a high balance and ideal for players who love to attack and have the physical strength for it. The Attack 18K is a softer version but still offensive with more ball output and less raw power than the 12K. And finally, the Lite, the lightest version, ideal for players who want comfort and easy handle in a racket. Still got any questions about the new AT10s? Well, drop them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching the video and see you in the next one. Ciao!